afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and whenever you have the opportunity to join me. I'm Dr. Jan. You are joining me at Russell Institute of Learning, Sidebar Education, and we are going to be sort of traveling through a little bit of the discussion between equal, fairness, and equity. And this goes back and is starting to pull in a bit of my research that I did for my doctorate, and that was from Antioch University. Oh, give a plug. Woo. And in the process, I really started out wanting to ask the question, what was the classroom of the future going to look like? I really was still thinking, are we going to be in a classroom? Are we going to be virtual? Will we be using paper? Will we be using computers? And not very long after I got started into my research, and you have lots of research and things you're researching before you even start the dissertation, and I realized I wasn't looking at brick and mortar or a certain structure, but what is the concept and the characteristics that no matter what the actual layout of the school or classroom would be, what is it that is going to initiate the school learning for children? Well, I wound up coming out of an era when No Child Left Behind was truly initiated. And again, because of its mandates, there were a lot of disgruntled teachers, parents, students, a lot of confusion, and so I was looking at and researching that. I found that by technicality, there are two camps of progressive. There are the administrative progressive, and there are the pedagogical or the teaching type of progressives. The administrative were much more rigid in trying to find processes that based upon this size school, this, and, lots of mandates, versus pedagogical is what is looking more at the child and the families and the community. And so I would have to say I'm a pedagogical progressive. And again, progressive doesn't always seem to be a very positive terminology. And again, what I also found out is terminology can change, and it flips and it flops, and people can say one thing and do another. And that is where then I did a research as it came out, characteristics of U.S. Progressive middle schools. And there were three main components that I found as I researched these smaller schools. I was really looking at smaller and more of a private, not that it had to be private, but they were the schools that tended to not be under the administrative, but more under the pedagogical framework. And under that, I found child-centered learning. What's best for the child? It wasn't about what is best for us to fill out paperwork, how to make sure that everybody's at the same place at the same time, and then we promote them. So it was child-centered. What is the child's capability? What is their learning? What is their background? And knowing there is an end. There is really a place that we are trying to move the children by a certain age. But it's not so mandated in stone that it has to be at the end of first grade, third grade, fifth grade, because that's when the tests are taken. That we know that by sixth grade, seventh grade, as they're transitioning out of what we would consider primary and going into more middle school, high school, these are the concepts that need to be learned. And so the learning also was taking, because of child-centered, being much more of hands-on versus paper pencil test. That was one thing, child-centered. Second is also that it is community-based or community-involved. Sometimes the best teachers are not necessarily the teachers standing at the front of the classroom, even though their responsibility is to be the facilitator, the guide, monitoring all that's going on. But if we're learning about engineering and science, or some of those, especially weather, that was one of mine that was often in my curriculum and still is. Well, let's see if we can get a meteorologist, somebody who's from the weather station that's going to come in. Let's talk to some of the farmers of how do they measure the rain. and what are these the tools that are used. So versus trying to always find it in a book, how can we learn through the community? At my one school I had before moving here, we had a father who was a farmer and brought the cows. So we had roped off an area. And so, yes, I was very ingenuitive in getting the community involved. And yes, it created lots of issues for our administrators because, well, did you get the paperwork? Did you this? And so that is where, okay, what is the best learning for the children? Community-based. And finally, third, I also found that we are looking at all of the stakeholders having a democratic decision making. So that, yes, I do have to include my administrators, include the parents, include other community people and the children. How are we going to accomplish this task? Let's talk together. Let's see if we can design this. Here's what I believe we need to learn. Here's my suggestion, and then being able to roll that out. The biggest problem with using all three of these concepts, it takes more time than a traditional school will allow. So what we're going to do is, this is going to go on for a little bit. It's not going to be a cut and dry, just like we got finished with a parents' prayers program. This one is going to roll out. My goodness, it took me, I think it was I'd have to go back, 5 to 6 year process from beginning to end of my research. But I have been living it, teaching it, and it is now time that as Russell Institute of Learning, I'm really wanting to have this discussion because, again, we are in the midst of a change in our education system, either good or bad, doesn't really matter. It's what is good for the children. And how are we going to involve the community? And can everybody at least have a comment and some kind of input before the decision is made? So we're going to look at, again, what is the difference between equity, fair or fairness, and equal? Because if we are looking at an education for children where it's child-centered, they're all not going to be doing the exact same thing. Now, do I have to all learn the same? And do I all need to perform at a level that we can say is standard? Yes, this has to be the standard we meet. But how I get each child there is going to be different because they all learn differently. They learn at different speeds and paces. And so for us trying to push our children into a cookie cutter world, that they're not cookie cutters, we are creating additional stress on the parents, the teachers, the students, and they're still not learning at this level. And we're trying to change everything and push harder, teach more, teach faster, teach deeper, whatever your concept. We're still missing it because we're not going back to the root. Are we teaching and meeting the children where they are? Are we involving the community? And are we involving everyone in the decision-making process, even though it may still come down to the teacher and administrators and only 2 or 3, but everybody's input needs to be shared so that you can make a better decision of what is the process. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Dr. Jan. This is Russell Institute Sidebar Education. And come along for this, I hope, communication and conversation that we're going to have. This shouldn't be me just telling you because remember, I'm wanting to hear your input. So please like, follow, share, comment. Let's get this going as a discussion so that as we have the opportunity to design what's best for the children, we're thinking of it now, not after the fact. And when people put so much money in, well, we can't change it now, and that's how we've always done it. Oh my goodness, let's think out of the box and fix what people have been trying to fix for over 150 years, and they've done nothing but the same thing over and over. And I always learned that if you do the same thing over and over, expecting different results, that's called insanity. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.